The message came on a Tuesday morning in the year 2347. Every radio on Earth, every screen, every device capable of receiving a signal suddenly displayed the same thing. An alien face, gray skin, 6 eyes arranged in a circle, a mouth that moved in ways human mouths could not. "We are the Dominion," the translation said. "We come in peace." Doctor was eating breakfast when the broadcast began. She dropped her spoon and stared at her screen. 20 years she had studied the possibility of alien life. 20 years of searching empty stars. Now they had found humanity first. Within hours, she was on a plane to Geneva. The United Earth Council had called every expert they could find. Linguists, scientists, military advisors, diplomats. They all gathered in one room and watched the message play again and again. President stood at the head of the table. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had led Earth through 3 economic crises and 2 near wars, but nothing had prepared her for this. "What do we know?" she asked. "They call themselves the Dominion," said. "A coalition of 12 species. They claim to control over 200 star systems in what they call the Orion sector. And they want friendship, they say, trade, cultural exchange. They want to welcome us into their community." The room was silent. Then someone laughed nervously. "That's it, they just want to be friends." Did not laugh. Something in the message bothered her. The words were kind, but the tone was wrong, like a smile that did not reach the eyes. She made a note to study the original transmission more carefully. 3 months later, Ambassador arrived on Earth. He was the first living alien most humans had ever seen. Tall, thin, with skin like wet stone. His 6 eyes blinked in a pattern that learned meant curiosity, or maybe hunger. She was never quite sure. Brought gifts, medical technology that could cure diseases humans had fought for centuries. Star charts showing safe routes through dangerous space. Promises of protection against unnamed threats lurking in the darkness between stars. President accepted everything with grace. Trade agreements were signed. Human students were invited to study on worlds. Observers were welcomed on Earth. The news called it the greatest moment in human history, called it too good to be true. She spent her nights studying communications. Their language was complex, full of hidden meanings and subtle implications. The more she learned, the more worried she became. Certain phrases appeared again and again. Containment, assessment, threat classification. These were not the words of friendship. She brought her concerns to the council. President listened politely, then shook her head. "You are seeing shadows where there are none," the president said. "They have given us everything we asked for. They have asked for nothing in return. Why would they deceive us?" "I do not know," admitted, "but something is wrong. I can feel it." Feelings are not evidence. We cannot insult our new allies based on your feelings. Left the meeting feeling sick. She was not wrong. She knew she was not wrong, but no one would listen. Far from Earth, Captain Lee commanded a small patrol ship near the colony of Nu. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes and a soldier's instincts. He had fought pirates and rebels and corporate raiders. He knew what danger looked like. And he saw danger now. Ships had been appearing near human colonies for weeks. They said they were conducting surveys, mapping trade routes, studying human settlement patterns for their records, but their movements were too precise, too coordinated. They were not exploring, they were planning. Sent report after report to Earth. Each one was acknowledged and filed away. The politicians did not want to hear warnings. They wanted to celebrate their new friendship. Admiral Park Jinnah was different. She commanded Earth's combined fleet from her flagship, the Eternal Dawn. She was old now, her hair white, her face lined with decades of service. She had seen too much to believe in fairy tales. When she read reports, she did not dismiss them. Instead, she quietly ordered defensive upgrades across the fleet. New weapons, better shields, faster engines. She told no one except her most trusted officers. "If I am wrong," she said, "we will have wasted some money. If I am right, we may survive what is coming." 6 months passed. Human colonies flourished under protection. Trade brought wealth. Technology brought comfort. People stopped looking at the stars with wonder. They looked at them with greed. Then intercepted a transmission. It was encoded in a format she had never seen before. It took her 3 days to break it. 3 days without sleep, without food, without hope. When she finally read the message, she felt her heart stop. Containment protocol approved. Sterilization timeline, 18 cycles. She read it again and again. The words did not change. She checked her translation. It was correct. Sterilization. They were going to sterilize humanity, not cure their diseases, not clean their cities. They were going to wipe them out. Every man, woman, and child. Every colony, every ship, every trace of human existence. Ran to the council chambers. She burst through the doors, interrupting a celebration of the 1-year anniversary of first contact. President looked up in surprise. "Doctor, what is the meaning of this?" Could not speak. She simply handed over her data pad. The president read the message. Her face went pale, then gray, then white as bone. "This cannot be real," she whispered. "It is real," said. "They never wanted friendship. They never wanted trade. We were always scheduled for death, and now we have less than 18 cycles to prepare." The room exploded into chaos. People shouted questions, demanded answers, accused of lying. But she stood silent in the center of the storm. She had done her job. She had warned them. Now humanity would learn the truth about the universe. It was not a place of wonder and friendship. It was a place of predators and prey. And humanity had just discovered which one they were. Far above Earth, an observation ship sent its final assessment to the Dominion. Humans remain unaware. Sterilization can proceed on schedule. Threat will be eliminated within standard parameters. High Arbiter received the report and felt satisfaction. Another dangerous species would soon be gone. The galaxy would be safer. The Dominion would endure. He had made this decision 17 times before. It was always the right choice. He did not know that this time would be different. He did not know that humanity would not die quietly. He did not know that his decision would be the end of everything his people had built. But he would learn. They would all learn. Captain Lee was drinking coffee when Nu died. He stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, watching the planet below. 12 million people lived there. Farmers, teachers, children, old people who had come to spend their final years under alien stars. He had protected them for 3 years. He knew their cities, their festivals, their dreams. Then the ships appeared. They came out of nowhere, hundreds of them, warships with weapons that glowed like dying suns. They did not announce themselves. They did not demand surrender. They simply began firing. The first shots hit the planetary defense stations. They exploded in silence, torn apart before they could even raise shields. Then the warships turned their weapons on the surface. Watched as bright lines of light fell from the sky. Where they touched, everything died. Buildings melted, forests burned, lakes boiled away into steam. And the people simply stopped existing. "Sir," his officer shouted, "what do we do?" Could not answer. He could not think. He could only watch as 12 million people were erased from existence in less than an hour. Then the bioweapons came. Pods launched from the ships, spreading across the parts of the planet the energy weapons had missed. A gray fog that killed everything it touched. Plants withered. Animals collapsed. Humans choked on their own blood and died where they stood. By the time the ships turned away, Nu was a dead world. Nothing lived. Nothing would ever live there again. Found his voice. "All ships," he said, his words hollow and broken. "Rescue operations, find survivors, anyone, please." They searched for 6 hours. They found fewer than 8,000 people. 8,000 out of 12 million. The rest were gone, not dead, not wounded, just gone, as if they had never existed at all. Across human space, the same thing was happening. Admiral Park Jinnah received the reports one after another, each one worse than the last. Colony after colony went silent, billions of people dying in coordinated strikes. They were not conquering humanity, they were erasing them. She stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn and felt older than she had ever felt before. 70 years of life, 50 years of service, nothing had prepared her for this. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we are receiving a broadcast from the Dominion. They say it is for all of humanity." "Put it through." The face of High Arbiter appeared on the main screen. He looked calm, almost bored, 6 eyes blinking in a slow, patient rhythm. "Humans of Earth," he said, "do not be afraid. What is happening is necessary. Your species has been classified as a threat to galactic stability. Your population growth is too fast. Your expansion is too aggressive. Your nature is too unpredictable. We have seen species like yours before. They always become dangerous. They always cause suffering. We are preventing that suffering before it begins." Jinnah gripped the arms of her chair, so hard her knuckles turned white. "The Dominion has performed this service 17 times, continued. "We take no pleasure in it, but we do what must be done. Your elimination will be complete within 30 cycles. Please do not resist. Resistance only extends your suffering." The broadcast ended. The bridge was silent. Then President's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. She sounded different. The warmth was gone from her voice. The hope was gone. What remained was something cold and hard and terrible. "All human forces," she said. "This is your president. You have heard the enemy's words. They have chosen genocide. They have decided to murder every man, woman, and child of our species. They expect us to accept this. They expect us to die quietly." She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was like ice. "They are wrong." Sergeant heard the broadcast on the colony of Prime. He was leading his soldiers through the ruins of the capital city, fighting ground troops street by street. The aliens were taller than humans, stronger, better armed, but had learned something in the first hours of fighting. They were not ready for humans who fought back. They had exterminated 17 species, but those species had surrendered. They had accepted their fate. They had died on their knees, begging for mercy that never came. Humans did not beg. Led a charge against a position. His soldiers screamed as they ran, not screams of fear, screams of rage, pure, burning, unstoppable rage. They fired their weapons. Humans fell, but more kept coming, always more. When reached the enemy line, he killed the first with his bare hands. He broke its neck and used its body as a shield while he shot 3 more. His soldiers followed, tearing through the alien troops like a storm through dry leaves. They broke, they ran, watched them flee and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "They thought we would die easy," he said to his soldiers. "Let us show them how wrong they were." On Earth, Doctor stood before the United Council. The room was different now. No more celebrations, no more hope, just grim faces and desperate questions. "How long do we have?" someone asked. 30 cycles by their calendar said. "About 2 years by ours. They will destroy our outer colonies first, then work inward. Earth will be last." "Can we negotiate?" Laughed. It was not a happy sound. "I spent a year learning their language. I spent months trying to understand their culture. You know what I learned? They do not see us as people. They see us as a disease. You do not negotiate with a disease. You cure it." President stood. She looked at every face in the room. Some were crying, some were angry, all were afraid. "They never intended peace," she said. "Every gift was a lie. Every promise was a trap. We welcomed them as friends and they planned our murder from the first moment." She walked to the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, ships were still killing her people, still burning her worlds, still erasing everything humanity had built. "I will not lie to you," she said. "We may not survive this. They are stronger than us. They have more ships, more weapons, more experience. They have destroyed 17 species before us. We may be the 18th. She turned back to face the room. "But we will not die without a fight. We will not go quietly into the darkness. If they want to kill us, they will pay for every single life. We will make them bleed for every world they take. And if we fall, we will fall standing, with weapons in our hands and fire in our hearts." She raised her fist. "They chose genocide. Now we choose our answer, and our answer is war, total war. War without mercy, without pause, without end, until they are dead or we are dead. There is no other way." The room erupted in cheers, angry cheers, desperate cheers, the cheers of people who had nothing left to lose. Far away, Captain Lee gathered his small fleet of survivors. 8,000 souls rescued from the ashes of Nu. 8,000 people who had watched their world die. "Where do we go?" his officer asked. Looked at the stars. Somewhere out there they were still killing, still destroying, still believing they had already won. "We go to war," he said, "and we do not stop until every last one of them knows our names, until they wake up afraid, until they understand that killing us was the worst mistake they ever made." He turned his ships toward Earth. Behind him, the dead world of Nu floated in silence, a grave marker for 12 million souls. But also a promise that their deaths would not be forgotten, would not be forgiven. They had wanted to end humanity. Instead, they had awakened something far worse than they could imagine. 2 years had passed since the genocide began. They had expected victory by now. They had expected human space to be empty and quiet, ready for new colonization. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before. Resistance. Admiral Park Jinnah stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, now from 100 battles. She was thinner than before. Her hair had turned completely white. Her eyes held a darkness that never faded, but she was still fighting. Of 17 human colonies, only 4 remained: Earth, Prime, Station, and the hidden fortress of Deep. Billions were dead, but billions still lived, and every single one of them had become a weapon. Jinnah looked at the tactical display. Ships were gathering for another assault. They had tried 6 times to break through to Earth. 6 times they had failed. Each time cost them more ships, more soldiers, more resources. "They are learning to fear us," she said quietly. Her aide nodded. "Their assault patterns have changed. They no longer expect quick victory. They are preparing for a long siege." "Good, let them prepare. While they wait, we grow stronger." Across human space, something remarkable was happening. Every factory had been converted to produce weapons. Every school taught combat alongside mathematics. Every citizen trained for war. Children learned to shoot before they learned to read. Old men and women worked day and night building ships, missiles, and armor. But the most important work happened in secret. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, thousands of scientists worked on a single project. They called it the Nemesis Protocol. Doctor led the research team. She no longer studied alien languages for the sake of understanding. Now she studied them to find weaknesses. Every communication was analyzed. Every cultural practice was examined. Every biological detail was. "We need to know everything about them," she told her team. "How they think, how they fight, how they live, and most importantly, how they die." The work was slow and terrible. They tested weapons on captured prisoners. They developed diseases that targeted alien biology. They created poisons that could wipe out entire planets. Had once been a woman who believed in peace and understanding. That woman was dead now, killed along with 9 billion of her people. "Is this right?" a young researcher asked her one day. "Are we becoming monsters?" Looked at him with eyes that held no warmth. They tried to kill every human that ever lived, every child, every grandmother, every artist and farmer and teacher. They did not ask if it was right. They simply did it. Now we do the same. If that makes us monsters, then we are monsters, but we are monsters who will survive. Captain Lee had become something legendary. His guerrilla fleet struck deep into territory, attacking supply lines and communication relays. He appeared without warning, destroyed everything he could find, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. They called him the Ghost of New. They told stories about him to frighten their young. They said he could not be killed, that he was not really human anymore, that he was some kind of demon born from the ashes of the genocide. Knew about these stories, he encouraged them. Fear is a weapon, he told his crew. Every soldier who fears us is a soldier who hesitates. Every hesitation gives us an advantage. Let them tell their stories. Let them spread our legend. Let them know that killing humans was the worst decision they ever made. His tactics were brutal. He attacked civilian targets. He destroyed food supplies. He bombed medical facilities. When commanders sent messages accusing him of war crimes, he laughed. "You declared us vermin," he broadcast back. "Vermin do not follow rules. Vermin do not show mercy. You wanted to exterminate us like pests. Now we act like the pests you made us. Enjoy the consequences of your choice." On Prime, Sargent had transformed human soldiers into the most feared ground force in the galaxy. He had studied physiology for months, finding every weakness, every vulnerability, every point where a blade or bullet could cause maximum damage. They are taller, he taught his soldiers, but their joints are weak. Their eyes are sensitive to bright light. Their hearing is poor in certain frequencies. They are strong, but they are slow. They are powerful, but they are predictable. Use all of this against them. Human soldiers became nightmares for troops. They attacked at night, using grenades to blind the aliens before charging with knives and axes. They fought in close quarters where height and reach became disadvantages. They screamed and howled as they killed, filling the air with sounds that drove soldiers to panic. Stories spread through the military. Humans could not be stopped. Humans felt no fear. Humans would rather die than surrender, and they would take 10 with them when they fell. The stories were not entirely true. Humans felt fear. They felt doubt. They felt despair in the dark hours when the war seemed endless and hopeless, but they never showed it. They never let the enemy see anything except rage and determination. "We are all actors now," told his soldiers. "We play the role of monsters because monsters is what they fear. Play your part well. Make them believe that we cannot be defeated. Make them believe that fighting us is pointless. Make them believe that the only safety is surrender." President had aged decades in 2 years. She rarely slept. She rarely smiled. She spent her days coordinating the war effort and her nights writing letters to the families of the dead. There were too many letters. There would always be too many letters. But she never gave up. She broadcast messages to her people every week, reminding them why they fought, what they had lost, and what they would become if they won. "We did not choose this war," she said in one broadcast. "We wanted peace. We offered friendship. We opened our arms to embrace the galaxy, and the galaxy tried to strangle us. Now we fight, not for conquest, not for revenge. We fight because the alternative is extinction. We fight because our children deserve to exist. We fight because we will not let them erase us from the universe." Finally, after 2 years of research and development, the Nemesis Protocol was complete. Admiral Jinnah traveled to Earth to see it for herself. She stood in an underground bunker and looked at the plans, the weapons, the devices that human desperation had created. Missiles that could travel faster than light and strike any world in space. Biological weapons that could kill everyone on a planet while leaving the planet itself untouched. Ships designed not for victory but for mutual destruction, ensuring that if humanity died, they would die with them. "Is this really what we have become?" Jinnah asked. Doctor stood beside her. "This is what they made us. They gave us a choice between extinction and becoming something terrible. We chose to live." Jinnah was silent for a long time. She thought about her who had died on the colony of. She thought about her husband who had killed himself after watching the Genocide broadcast. She thought about all the people she had known, all the lives she had protected, all the futures that had been stolen. "May whatever gods exist forgive us," she finally said. "May they forgive us for what we are about to do." She turned to her aide. "Prepare the fleet. Contact all commanders. The counteroffensive begins in 30 days. The message spread across human space. In ships and stations, in bunkers and bases, humans heard the news and felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. Not hope for peace, not hope for forgiveness, hope for vengeance, hope that they would finally understand the price of their decision, hope that the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to kill humanity. The counterattack was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Dominion had ruled the Orion sector for 3,000 years. 12 species, 200 star systems, billions of souls all united under the wisdom of the High Arbiters. They had faced rebellions and wars and disasters. They had always survived. They had always won. On the day humanity struck back, their empire began to die. Admiral Park Jinnah stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, surrounded by the largest human fleet ever assembled. 3,000 warships, 50,000 support vessels, millions of soldiers ready to fight, and behind them the weapons of the Nemesis Protocol waiting to be unleashed. She addressed her fleet one final time. "Today we begin our counterattack," she said. "For 4 years we have bled, we have suffered, we have buried our families and watched our worlds burn. They believed they were destroying a threat. They believed they were protecting their perfect order. They believed humanity would die screaming and afraid, just like the 17 species that came before us." Her voice hardened. "They were wrong. Today they learn how wrong they were. Today we bring the war to their space. Today we make them understand that genocide has a price, and that price is everything they have ever built." She raised her hand. "All ships begin the attack." The human fleet jumped into space like a hammer striking glass. The first target was a military station on the border, home to 50,000 soldiers. It had been considered impregnable, the strongest fortress in the sector. It fell in 4 hours. Human ships swarmed the station from every direction, overwhelming its defenses with sheer numbers and fury. Captain Lee led the assault, his guerrilla tactics now applied on a massive scale. His ship struck weak points before counterattacks and struck again from different angles. "They fight like we expected," he reported to Jinnah. "Defensive, cautious. They are trying to protect everything at once. They cannot." "Good, press the advantage, no mercy, no pause." The humans pressed forward. World after world fell to their advance. Fleets tried to organize a defense, but they were too slow, too careful. They had spent 3,000 years fighting species that surrendered when the situation seemed hopeless. They did not know how to fight an enemy that never gave up. Sargent led the ground assault on Prime, the home world of the Dominion. 20 million soldiers landed on the planet's surface, supported by orbital bombardment and airstrikes. The fighting was brutal. Every city became a battlefield. Every street became a grave. Himself fought his way to the Hall of Arbiters, where the leaders of the Dominion had ruled for. He found High Arbiter hiding in a bunker beneath the building, surrounded by guards who died protecting him. When the last guard fell, stood over the alien who had ordered humanity's extinction, looked up at him with 6 eyes full of terror. "You cannot do this," said. "This is illegal. This violates every law of civilized warfare. I demand the rights of a prisoner. I demand to be treated according to the conventions of." Laughed, it was not a kind sound. "You classified us as vermin," he said. "You declared that we were not people. You said we were a disease to be cured, a threat to be eliminated. Vermin do not take prisoners. Diseases do not follow laws. You made the rules of this war. Now you live by them." He dragged from the bunker and brought him before a human tribunal. The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict was never in doubt. The sentence was death. Across the former Dominion, the 12 species that had supported the genocide faced human justice. Some surrendered immediately, hopping for mercy. They received none. Some fought to the last soldier, dying in their bunkers and strongholds. They were buried without ceremony in unmarked graves. President broadcast her message to every corner of the galaxy. "You chose genocide," she said. "You decided to murder an entire species because we seemed dangerous, because we grew too fast, because we were different from you. Now you see the consequences of that choice. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will only be justice. And justice means that those who tried to destroy us will themselves be destroyed." The neutral powers of the galaxy watched in horror. Ambassadors from a dozen species arrived at human space, begging for restraint. They spoke of peace, of forgiveness, of the importance of ending cycles of violence. Doctor met with them. She had once been a diplomat, a believer in understanding between species. Now she was something else entirely. "You speak of peace," she said. "Where was your peace when New burned? Where was your forgiveness when 12 million people died in a single day? Where were your concerns about violence when the exterminated 17 species before us?" The ambassadors had no answer. Held up a data chip. "This contains the names of every human killed in the genocide, 9 billion names. It would take 1,000 years to read them all. When you can recite every name on this list, then speak to us of mercy. Until then, be silent." The ambassadors left. They did not return. The war continued for another 2 years. The Dominion ceased to exist as a political entity. Its worlds were occupied. Its leaders were executed. Its population was scattered across the galaxy, refugees from an empire that had thought itself eternal. But the fighting did not end. Some refused to surrender. They formed resistance cells, launching attacks against human occupation forces. They hoped that eventually humanity would grow tired of war and offer peace. They did not understand what they had created. Captain Lee hunted these resistance cells with the same merciless efficiency he had shown throughout the war. When he found them, he destroyed them. Not just the fighters, but their hiding places, their support networks, their families and friends who had sheltered them. "You call this excessive," he said to a captured resistance leader. "You say we have already won, that this killing serves no purpose, but you are wrong. Every who dies sends a message that genocide has consequences, a message that will echo through the galaxy for 1,000 years, a message that says, never try to kill humanity, because if you fail, we will make you wish you had succeeded." The resistance collapsed, not because they were defeated militarily, but because hope itself had died. They had believed they could outlast human anger, that eventually mercy would return. But there was no mercy. There was only the relentless machine of human vengeance, grinding forward day after day, year after year. Admiral Park Jinnah watched the final stronghold fall from the bridge of her ship. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a great weariness that seemed to fill her bones. "It is over," her aide said. "We have won." Jinnah shook her head. "No, we have survived. There is a difference." She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a galaxy full of alien species was watching, learning, understanding for the first time what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. "Send a message to all human forces," she said. "The war is officially over. The Dominion no longer exists. We have achieved our objective." She paused. "But let every species in the galaxy know this. We did not want this war. We did not start this war. We tried to live in peace, and we were answered with genocide. Now they are gone, and we remain. Let that be a lesson to anyone who thinks of repeating their mistake." The message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, and everywhere it went, alien species heard it and understood. Humanity had survived, and they had done it by becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would never be threatened again. 10 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Where once there had been a great power called the Dominion, there was now only empty space and dead worlds. Where once there had been 12 species working together, there were now scattered survivors hiding in the corners of the galaxy, afraid to speak their own names. And at the center of it all, humanity stood alone. Admiral Park Jinnah walked through the memorial garden on Earth. She was 83 years old now. Her uniform hung loose on her thin frame. Her hands shook when she tried to hold them still. But she still came here every week, rain or shine, to read the names. 9 billion names, carved into black stone walls that stretched for miles. Every human who had died in the genocide, every life that had been stolen, every future that would never be. She stopped at a particular section. The names of her were there. Dead at ages 7, 5, and 3, killed when the colony was sterilized. Their bodies were never found. There was nothing left to find. Jinnah touched their names with trembling fingers. She did not cry. She had no tears left. She had cried them all out years ago in the dark hours between battles when no one could see her weakness. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I made them pay. I made them all pay, but it does not bring you back. Nothing brings you back." She stood there for an hour reading names she had memorized long ago. Then she walked away, her footsteps slow and heavy on the stone path. Captain Lee commanded humanity's border fleet now. His ships patrolled the edges of human space, watching for any sign of alien intrusion. His orders were simple and absolute. Any alien vessel entering human territory without explicit permission was to be destroyed. No warnings, no second chances. In 10 years, only 3 ships had tested this policy. None of them had survived to regret it. Sat in his command chair watching the stars on his. He was 51 years old. His hair was gray. His face was lined with scars from a dozen battles. But his eyes were still sharp, still alert, still ready for war. "Sir," his officer reported, "long-range sensors detect an alien merchant vessel approaching the border. They are requesting permission to trade." "Sir, they say they have medical supplies. They want to establish peaceful relations." His expression did not change. "I said, if they cross the border, destroy them." "Yes, sir." The merchant vessel turned and fled. Word would spread. Another species would learn the lesson that all species learned eventually. Humanity did not want contact. Humanity did not want trade. Humanity wanted to be left alone. Sargent ran the military academy now. Every year, thousands of young humans came to learn the arts of war from the man who had captured High Arbiter. He taught them everything he knew: how to fight, how to kill, how to survive. But he also taught them something else. "Never forget," he told his students on the first day of every year. "Never forget what they did to us. Never forget the 9 billion. Never forget that we trusted them and they tried to murder us. Peace made us weak. Trust made us targets. Never again. We will never be weak again. We will never trust again. That is the price of survival." The students listened and learned. They absorbed his lessons into their bones. They would carry his hatred forward into the future, passing it to their children and their children's children. The wound of the genocide would never heal. It was not meant to heal. Doctor had become the galaxy's greatest expert on the. She wrote histories and studies, documenting every aspect of the species that had tried to destroy humanity. Their culture, their technology, their religion, their art, all of it preserved in exhaustive detail. Some asked why she bothered. They were gone. Their civilization was dust. Why spend years studying the dead? "Because memory is justice," she answered. "They wanted to erase us from existence. They wanted the galaxy to forget that humans ever lived. Now I do the same to them, but in reverse. I remember everything about them. I preserve every detail. And I make sure that everyone knows what they did and what happened to them because of it. They will be remembered forever, not as a great civilization but as a warning. She published her final book on the 10th anniversary of the war's end. It was called The Price of Genocide. It became required reading in every human school. President had retired 5 years ago. She lived in a small house by the sea, far from the politics and ceremonies of Earth's capital. She rarely gave interviews anymore. She had said everything she needed to say. But on the 10th anniversary, a journalist found her and asked for her thoughts. "Do you regret anything?" the journalist asked. Sat in silence for a long moment. She looked out at the ocean, watching the waves roll in and out, endless and eternal. "I regret that we trusted them," she finally said. "I regret that we believed their lies. I regret that we were so eager for friendship that we ignored every warning sign. 9 billion people died because of that trust. Because of my trust, I will carry that guilt until I die." What about our response? Do you regret what we did to the... Turned to look at the journalist. Her eyes were old, but there was still steel in them. "They made a choice," she said. "They decided to kill us. Every man, woman, and child. Every dream, every hope, every future. They chose genocide. We chose survival. History will judge us both. But history will remember one thing above all else. We are still here. They are not. That is the only judgment that matters." The journalist nodded and prepared to leave. Then he asked one last question. "Do you think we will ever have peace with the galaxy?" Laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Peace requires trust. Trust requires forgiveness. We cannot forgive what was done to us. We will never forgive. So no, there will be no peace. There will only be silence. The galaxy has learned to fear us, and that fear keeps us safe. Let them stay afraid. Fear is the only language they understand." Far from Earth, on a small farming colony, a young girl sat with her grandmother and looked up at the stars. The night sky was beautiful, full of lights and colors, but something was missing. "Grandmother," the girl asked, "why don't the aliens talk to us?" The grandmother was old. She had been young when the genocide began. She had watched New die from a refugee ship, pressed against the window, seeing everything she loved burn away. She pulled her granddaughter close and followed her gaze to the stars. "Because, little one, they learned what happens when you try to kill us. They thought we were weak. They thought we would die quietly like all the others. They were wrong. We survived. We fought back. We destroyed everyone who tried to hurt us. And now the whole galaxy knows the truth." "What truth?" The grandmother smiled. It was not a gentle smile. "That humans are dangerous. That we do not forgive. That we do not forget. That anyone who threatens us will be destroyed, no matter how long it takes, no matter the cost. The aliens are afraid of us now. They hide in their own space and pray that we never come for them." The girl thought about this. Is that good? It keeps us alive. It keeps you safe. It means that no one will ever try to genocide us again. So yes, little one, it is good. It is the best we can hope for in a galaxy that tried to murder us. She looked up at the stars, at the vast emptiness where the Dominion had once ruled. "Let them stay afraid. That fear is what keeps us alive. That fear is our shield, our sword, our legacy. We will never let it fade. We will never let them forget." The girl nodded, not fully understanding but accepting. Someday she would grow up and learn the full history. She would read the 9 billion names. She would understand why humanity stood alone among the stars, feared by all, trusted by none. And she would teach her own children the same lessons, the same warnings, the same promise. Never again, never forget, never forgive. The stars glittered in the darkness, silent and cold. Somewhere out there, 1,000 alien species hid in their homes and hoped that humanity would never come for them. They had made humanity into monsters. Now they would live with those monsters forever. And humanity would survive. That was all that mattered. That was all that would ever matter again.